It's not often that you get to launch a new award at a conference and actually get to decide what you're going to do in the process of launching the award. And what we decided to do is ask Tony to give the 99% audience sort of a sneak peek into his creative process that drives his remarkable inventions by answering a series of questions that have been sourced by from many of you over the past few weeks. And so Tony, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Scott. So first, I just, you might have heard of Nest. I think you heard of the other things kind of in the middle. But just, this has been a process for me over the last 20 some odd years, 22 years or so, of creating different products. And the first decade was not necessarily a lot about success. The first decade was a lot about learning, and that's the first kind of 3 products there. The next decade was all about application of those learnings and working with some amazing teams of people that both worked with me on those other projects in the beginning, as well as the ones at Apple. And then now, starting my third decade, now I'm really taking upon myself to mentor teams, to take what I've learned and what I've applied and mentor the next generation of people trying to create new products. And while the Nest Learning Thermostat is a new product and a new idea that I envisioned, it's really the team that we've created who have really taken it to the next leap. In all the other cases, I got to lead engineering and parts of the design. Now I'm CEO and I get to watch and engineer vicariously through the teams that are there. So really, it's been a long time in coming, and to definitely trust your gut and keep going with it. If you look here, during this time frame, the internet happened. All my friends, all the people I worked with in the first 3 products, they went off and they decided they were going to just go do electrons. And I decided I'm going to continue to do atoms plus electrons, and never gave up hope. I decided to continue along that line and develop the craft. And again, when it comes back, when you look at something like the iPhone and now the Nest Learning Thermostat, it's not just about electrons, it's about atoms. It's about, hopefully, not letting that art of atoms die. Because everything you see, touch, taste, feel around you are atoms, not just electrons. And we're going to continue to build this world. We're going to continue to build it with atoms, plus electrons, a lot of smart electrons. All right, so that was my
I get to fire
preference.
questions now?
You can start firing some questions.
Thank you, Tony. The first question that a number of people asked is, what is the source of your creativity?
Well, I'll answer the question, but let me just preface it by saying all the things you saw on that last page were all products that I was passionate about. I don't work for a design consultancy. I always created the teams, built the teams to create those products. And so when I answer, I'm not going to be able to answer for consultancies. Those things won't apply. But hopefully some of the learnings will. So that said, what is my source of creativity? Today, it's all about frustration. I look at the world. I peer into different products. And I say, what's wrong with this product? Or why doesn't this product exist? I keep getting frustrated. But how is that frustration born? How do you tune into that frustration? It all started when I was a little kid. When I was 4 years old, 5 years old, my grandfather took me under his wing, and showed me how to build things, how to build go-karts, how to change electrical sockets, how to paint, how to saw, how to work with your hands, and how to really be engaged with physical things. And so that through those years of working together and fixing bikes and repairing lawnmowers, you get to learn about the world. And you start to get more curious about how other things work. And so as I evolved and moved forward, there were all kinds of things in the world that I wanted to learn how they were manufactured, how they were built, how were they designed. And so I took that curiosity and I learned about everything around me, how things work. Not everything, but everything I was curious about. Music, art, architecture, and obviously products. And so through that, I was able to then look over the years at various products, various things like that light, that camera, and I go, I think I know how they built that. I think I know how they designed it. And you start to ask more questions about it and learn more and more about it and get more and more curious about even deeper technologies inside those products. And so at the time of at the time when I was just getting out of college, I was not challenging myself enough. I was deciding I'm not working and learning. I think I've learned everything, but there's got to be more to learn. So I went to go work with my heroes at General Magic, the guys who actually created the Macintosh, and learn from them, learn from my heroes. And then, only then, was I able to understand how to build these things correctly, how to build these things. And so frustration today came from being able to perceive the world, understand how it's built, and then say, why isn't built differently? And so you can very easily, instead of looking at it as a black magic box, you can tear it down into its component pieces, understand which pieces work, which ones don't, and then reassemble them in a new way. And so frustration is where my creativity comes from.
What is the best way to prototype?
Prototyping. Well, there's all kinds of different prototyping. So there's no one correct way to do it. But in anything you build or anything you design, there is differentiation. There's something you're going for that you're truly trying to differentiate. The reason why you're doing this project is to do something special, something different. So you need to prototype that differentiation. You need to go and look at that in detail, in really, really hard detail. However, sometimes people don't know what the hard things are and what some of the easy things are to prototype. When you think about different projects, at least from where I've sit, I've had people come up to me, and I'll give you a story. People came up to me and said, I have this great idea for a kitchen computer. This was in the 90s. We're going to make a kitchen computer. It's going to be beautiful. We're going to make it so it's waterproof, and you're going to be able to touch. You're going to get recipes and all these other things. And they would bring to me a model and say, OK, that's an interesting model. OK, you've decided you understand what all the hardware bits are, and it needs a screen, and it might have some internet connection. But you didn't really attack the real problem. You didn't prototype the actual user experience. You prototyped a piece of hardware to get people to go, ooh, that's kind of cool. But they didn't actually look at the hard pieces of the puzzle. What is the user experience? How are you going to change things? How is it going to look on the screen? How are people going to interact? How are they going to get there with one or two touches on that touchscreen? Too many times people go for the flash and the easy thing to prototype. They don't go for the hard thing. The hard thing is what sets your schedule. It sets your budget. It sets whether or not it's doable, and you need to prototype it. So, again, what's the best way to prototype? Find the hardest thing, the thing you're differentiating, the thing that you really want to change, and go and look deeply into that. Because through that, you're going to find your schedule, your budget, the team you need, and the challenges you're going to face.
And a quick follow-up question to that would be, how do you know when to scrap and start over versus continue to iterate?
So there's two different ways of looking at this. One is you're experienced in the field of where you're going at it, where you're going for. You've done something similar to it. So you have a feel for what is supposed to happen and how it's going to work. Then there's another place where you're prototyping where you don't even know what's going on. You're just starting to learn about it. In the first case, you can usually sense it. It's a gut. You have experience. You know how far you can take it. In the second case, you need to have experts around you. You don't have to listen to them all the time, but enough that you can start to learn from them. Start to learn about what I am trying to build and figure out whether or not it is attainable. So you have to use your own intellect. You can't listen to the experts all the time. Sometimes the experts will tell you no. Absolutely tell you no. And let me give you an example of that. So I built a prototype for the iPod, early days. And I had this crazy idea of how to make a very fast hard drive and a really low power music player using this chip and make it very, very cost effective. And I looked at everything and I prototyped and I go, well, it seems like it's working. It looks like it's working fine. But I really didn't know enough about this protocol, this certain thing. So I said, I'm going to call in an expert. And I called in an expert from another part of Apple who'd never seen the project because it was super secret. And they came over, and I described what I was trying to do, and I talked about why I thought it worked, and all this other stuff. And the expert goes, that'll never work. It'll absolutely never work. This is crazy. It's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. I said, well, it's right here. It works. It's working just fine. And that guy stormed off in a huff, and literally a few months later, we shipped the iPod. So, sometimes you bring in the experts to help test things. But like we heard with some of the previous presentations, when you actually make somebody really upset, you might be on the right track.
Great. So what is the right combination between long-term strategies and agility?
Long-term strategies and agility. Let me give you a story. General Magic, the company that you saw at the top left. We were making a product called the Sony Magic Link and Motorola Envoy. It was basically the iPhone 20 years ahead of its time. It was absolutely a huge bundle of technology. We first started with this vision, this very constrained vision. And we were like, this seems doable. And it was a small team. We were 30 at the time. I was employee 30, something like that. And we're like, OK, we're going to ship it, and we're going to get it done in a year and a half. A year and a half came and went. And then the vision wasn't big enough. So we decided to change the vision. And it got bigger, so we could raise more money. And then the project went on another year and a half. We're now 3 years into this, and we still haven't built what we needed to build. We waited another year, and then we finally shipped this thing. Well, over the course of those 4 years, people got disincented to be on the team. They lost their emotional passion for what we were trying to build. We lost our way. So you have to always set up constraints for yourselves. You have to be able to learn, and the only way you learn is by actually getting to a milestone sooner than you think. You can have a long-term vision. You can have a 3, a 5, a 10-year vision, and there's nothing wrong with that. You should have one. But you need to set near-term milestones. Maybe if it's atoms, it's 9 months or 12 months. If it's electrons, it's 3 months. But you need some near-term milestone where you actually understand what you're trying to build, put the assumptions down on paper, get to that milestone, and then reassess once you're there whether or not you're going to make it to your vision or to your ultimate product. You need to continue to do this. And why do you need to do that? 2 reasons. One is for your team. Your team has to understand where they're going. They have to understand in detail. Your partners need to understand in detail where you're going. Sometimes, when you get to that milestone, it didn't work out like you thought. So you can go back and look at your assumptions. You can see what went wrong. But everybody together as a team understands that. And they can try to figure out what's the next milestone. It's very important that you always keep everybody on the team learning and understanding why failure happened or why success happened, so that you can continually learn for the next milestone. When you look at short term, you have to remember that you're always going to do, at least in my case, make another product, hopefully build off of that last product. You don't need everything in your first product. It's usually too complicated. It might be because the engineer wants everything in there. So you need to make sure you set those milestones, set those constraints, so that you can actually ship, because you must ship. Why must you ship? You must ship because the people on your team need to put something on their resume. They need to see that results. What happens if you never ship, or you never ship something that everyone believes in? They go to their next job, they try to find it, and they go, what did you do the last 2 years? Well, we futzed around. We didn't really get to a milestone. You, as a leader of a team, you absolutely must get your team to ship. Ship whatever that is, to learn and to acknowledge the people on the team that they did something. Whether it was right or wrong, but they did something. And that they can show other people that they did something and they learned from it.
What are some creative ways to get projects approved?
So, projects approved. There's 3 essential things. The first one's passion, right? The passion of you, the passion of your team members. It's a thoughtful passion. It's not an egotistical passion. It's a passion where you're really, how can I say, thoughtful, introspective about what you're trying to do and communicate it to those people who you're trying to get to join your team, either join your team or join the team to actually approve it and move forward. So that's the first thing. The second thing is presentation. You need to make sure that you've looked at all of the details. You want the person on the other side of the table to go, they don't just understand what it's going to take to build the product or project. They understand the risks that they're going to face. You make them a part of the project and say, look, here are our challenges that we're going to face along the way. These are the ways we're going to mitigate those risks. When they see that you're looking at those, they start going, wait a second, this team is different. They think about the problem differently. It's not all just, sunny, happy days and it's just all going to happen. Because if you're doing something differentiated, it will be tough. It will be difficult. You need to bring them along. You need to tell them what your challenges are. So that's 2, passion, presentation. The third one is partnership. Make sure you're talking to the right people, the absolute right people, the decision makers who can actually help you. And they're not just thinking about the rational numbers, the figures. When are we going to ship? How many are we going to ship? How much money are we going to make? What's the ROI? If they're starting with those kinds of conversations, you have the wrong people. You need to literally think about the people you're talking to and make sure they're the right ones. They can also not just be emotionally engaged with you and rationally engaged, but also can help you when there are other teams around you that may be jealous of what you're doing, or maybe want your funding, or maybe want to be able to stop it in some way. They can actually go in and go and take that team out and help you. The other thing that I've experienced is that while you might have a partnership that will say yes, you have to look at their track record. Let me contrast 2 companies. I worked at Philips Electronics, building the Philips Velo and Nino. And that company, we kicked off many projects. But for every 10 projects that were green-lighted, 9 projects died. And they didn't die in the conceptual stages. They died weeks before they were actually going to launch. It was very easy to say yes to getting it going, but it's very hard to get it launched. Whereas, contrast that with Apple. Less than, that I saw, less than 2% of projects ever died. Never died. Why? Because we always learned from whatever we were doing and it morphed into something else and it continued until it actually saw success. You need to make sure you understand who you're partnered with, and if your project is approved, what is their track record?
How do you strip away the excess of design?
Set constraints. Set absolute constraints. Set constraints. If you don't have constraints, make up some constraints. The first and foremost thing is like I've said, pick your window for shipping. Whether it's 3 months, 6 weeks, 3 years, find a time, but typically no more than a year. That's been my rule. You have to ship within a year because you cannot hold on to the emotional, team spirit for more than a year. People's lives changes those things. People can't commit more than a year. That's the first thing. Second, there are 2 different types of decisions when making a product. One is opinion-based decisions, and the other one are fact-based decisions. Fact-based decisions are really easy as long as everyone's looking for the facts and everyone's arguing over the facts and we make decisions over the facts. But the other one, the previous one, making decisions based on opinion, is hard, is very hard. People will say, oh, well, let's go get a third-party opinion. Let's go get customers to tell us what they want. Let's go take data. Let's go. In my 20 years, I've never seen that ever work. You can take data after the fact, but you can't take data before you've shipped it. People don't understand what you're trying to do. They'll give you false data. So, what do we do in the case of opinion-based decisions? Very simply, you must have a leader who can make those decisions, who can not just make the decisions, but also can articulate why they're making those decisions. You want to be able to understand, if you're not the leader, why the leader is choosing this and not that. What is it? Is it about the market? Is it about the customer? Is it about the manufacturing? Why are we going this way instead of that? And why is that? To build DNA inside the team of understanding why it is we do what it is we do in the absence of data.
All right, the last question is actually one of mine. There's some perks. What were the greatest moments of doubt that you've encountered?
I'm always doubtful. I'm always doubtful. Everything I do is doubtful. Why? Because when you're trying to differentiate, when you're trying to do something different, there's going to be that gut moment, that gut sense. Is this right? Is this not right? If you're not having doubt, you're not pushing the boundaries far enough. It's too easy. Or you're not looking at the details enough and understanding the real risks involved. Because if you are really differentiating, you're going to be able to experience that doubt. And I guess when people on my team come to me and they say, wow, it was a dramatic day here, or it's been a roller coaster ride. If it doesn't feel like a roller coaster ride, in the morning you come in, it's a wonderful day, and by the end of the day, it's a disaster, so you're not doing something right. You need to be feeling that doubt every single day, pushing, in whatever vector you're looking at in that moment.
Tony, thank you so much. And once again, congratulations.
Thank you.